Hello, and welcome to our first interview of the term with a student at UW with lived experience of autism. So everyone meet Cameron. Cameron is a student studying GBDA, Global Business and Digital Arts, and he's also one of our students who is very passionate about advocating for autism. So hello, Cameron. Thank you for interviewing with us. So we'll get started with our first question. So our first question is, looking back, did autism affect you differently from when you were younger compared to now?
Most definitely. Going back, I mean, it's something that has always been there from when I was really young. My parents didn't really think much about it at the time, considering I was adopted and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's there's always been this interest in um just this focus, I guess, on areas that have, if I wanted to, I guess, uh like I don't know. I went through like these phases where I was into Pokemon, where I was into all these other hobbies, I guess. And as that went on, my parents noticed that there's that quality of me that was different, I guess. And of my mom labeled it as OCD, but it was later out, it was a symptom of autism when I finally got diagnosed last year. So uh going going about it now, when I first found that out, it was definitely, things made more sense. And I've just utilized and learned that it's not like a hate thing that like people try to make it out to be. It's a gift, right?
Mhm.
And that's it's what's leading me to kind of accelerate in my current career pathway, and just keeping on going, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Our next question for you is, what do you think is overlooked in the way people perceive autistic individuals?
I think people have this preconception that autistic people are not as bright, I guess, as other individuals. And theoretically, that's incorrect because we're all on the spectrum to some degree, right? We all have these characteristics that make us, not only who we are, but make us part of that community, right? And I think a lot of people have this notion of, oh, people with autism are, not as bright, not can't think or whatever. But if you look back at some of the history's greatest geniuses, like Einstein, right? He had autism, and you can go back to most geniuses in the world, right? And they've all had this unique gift, right? And so definitely the spectrum ranges, but it doesn't make those people any less than anyone else, and where I think society tries to make it out to be.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Our next question is, what is a big misconception people have about you or um, individuals with autism as a whole?
Well, I think for myself, a lot of people have this notion to say that I'm very self-centered, and I'm very kind of I'm very self-absorbed, I guess, and very introverted, which I mean, to a degree, yes, but it's I mean, it's all what makes me me. Like, Kathy Pinnell. But sorry, I just got a phone call. Um, I mean, when I think about it, I can go all the way back, and I can see that even throughout all of high school, like, people had this perception that I was kind of the odd kid out, right? Um, but now, I mean, it's the reason why I'm an entrepreneur. It's the reason why I'm an author. It's the reason why I'm close to becoming a multimillionaire. It's really a gift. Those things that people are think that are not the greatest in in autistic people are actually one of the brightest. Like even in like society has this notion, okay, that has this perception of like a narrow tunnel, right? When you go with a narrow tunnel, all you're able to see is straight. You're not able to see all the other perspectives. And there's a process and that I like quote from the Buddha, his perception was one of the eight paths to enlightenment, also known as Dharma, was that the only right perspective is all points of view or no points of view, right? So even just looking at that theoretically, that when society has this notion that we're different, it's it's they blind themselves to that narrow tunnel, right? And I think a lot of individuals in today's society that have autism, you know, sure, they may struggle at certain things, but they also accelerate in ways that others do not. And but it's what makes life unique. It's what gives life its beauty. If we didn't have neurodiversities, the world would be pretty dull, actually, I think.
Mhm. Thank you for your insight. And finally, um, we would like to ask you, well, what do you wish people understood better about autism?
That it's not a one size fits all.
Mm.
You can have an individual that, like myself, that struggles with comprehension and has this narrow focus, but functions well for the most part in society. And you can have somebody else that struggles with everything. It really depends. And I think the biggest thing going beyond all of it is just the that people with autism are not cursed, like a lot of people try to make it out to be, right? People will shun it in our university and people will hate on it and stuff. And it's really, really unfortunate, actually, because sometimes the people that have that, you know, turns out to be, you may be working for them someday, right? It's what makes them beautiful. Like look at a flower, right? And in the intricate patterns of a flower, right? When you look at a flower, does it like sure when it starts to when it's the bud, right? And it is in that pupal state. Can you judge its character, what it's going to look like off of that? No. When it finally blooms, it releases its full potential, and what happens is it creates this dynamic flow of energy, right? It is chi, as a lot of people say, but it's this that very life force that's the same in every single one of us. Every single one of us is really just the same. We all have the same needs. We all have the same wants, right? And society, if you go back from generation to generation, right? And in my recent publication, Think Differently, so it's one of the books I wrote, I go into how some of society is like a telephone game, right? I'm sure you've played telephone. I'm sure we all have played telephone where you say one thing and then it get passed along from person to person, and then at the very end, right there, the it turns out that that phrase is completely different from what has been said originally, right? And so when you go thinking about this perception of neurodivergency, it stems, who did they learn it from, right? They probably learned it from external factors like friends or family or stuff. And where did they learn it from? And you can go it all the way back up to the point where, maybe a fact, like a small fact or perception gets changed into what they now what I now call fragmented perception, fragmented memory, right? So it is a thing where not everyone is correct in life, right? Not everyone has the same perception, not everyone thinks the same, not everyone looks the same, but we all have that same core. That's what matters most. And it's something I wish society will see
Mhm.
is that beauty. And not just people with autism, but everyone. Like people like to judge on people based off of just one thing. Think of it this way, right? If you had a book, right, and you were rating as you go throughout your life, right? A person, like, what makes you decide you want to read a book, right? You can look at the cover, you can look at the back, read the back, and then you come up with that perception of what of that you want to read it or you don't want to read it, right? But it's the same thing in people's lives. People will try to say, oh, I will be friends with him based off of just this one interaction, or etc. But needless to say, that whole previous chapter could be an ending splatter mess, and people do not see that. People do not understand that. People may not even have read it, but later on down the line, what happens is it all comes together in this beautiful masterpiece. And that's what I think helps make life unique. It's what helps make life beautiful. And I hope that as more and more people become aware of the stigmatism, that we can all align to one.
Oh, thank you so much, Cameron, for sharing with us today, for interviewing with us, and we'll hope to see you next time.